with so that the people who haven't watched the session can watch it later. Okay, so statutory reserve was something which were as per the government regulations, as per SEBI, some kind of liquid instruments, CRR requirements, SLR requirements, which all these government authorities tend to bound the banks by. They have to fulfill these regulations. That's like, for example, you have to put in this much amount of money into liquid instruments, into safer instruments. General reserve for general purposes can be used to pay off dividends for expansion activities, for some general activities of the businesses. The special reserve are oriented towards special contingent events, which are categorized by this particular bank. And that special situations and severity of those special situations might differ from bank to bank. Then you have the capital reserve. It is something to meet some unforeseen emergencies or contingencies or blocks one events which the company might face in terms of COVID, some Israeli-Iran war, some kind of pandemic situations, right? So these kinds of situation is something, again, it's general, it's not specific. Now you have an investment reserve account. Now investment reserve account is something that tends to record the gains and loss on particular investments. So for example, if this company, HDFC Bank, has invested into Kotak Securities worth like $1 million. So whatever gain and loss this company as HDFC Bank, a target company, is making upon that $1 million, that gain or loss upon those investments, right? Be it on selling of those investments, like be it upon just having a kind of an MTM gain or loss, mark to market gains and loss. And what do I mean by the mark to market gain and loss? It is simply when the person or an investor is not selling off the investment in the market. Abhi market में investment बेची नहीं है. So fall and rise in the value of that investment. So for example, if I purchased a share worth 100 rupees and the value of that share rose to 120. So 20 rupees is my unrealized capital gain. And why unrealized? Because I haven't sold that 120 rupees and got that 20 rupees in my bank account, right? So that 20 rupees is an unrealized capital gain. It's a mark to market gain. Popularly, we tend to call it as a mark to market gain, MTM gain, right? So all these kinds of gains and losses, be it on mark to market gains or losses, or be it on actually realized gains or losses, all these things tend to come under your investment reserve account. And then you have your investment fluctuation account. So this is something what happens basically, there can be some unfavorable movements. So for example, if I purchase stocks worth 100 rupees and I expected that the price of that stock shall rise from 100 rupees to 150 rupees. Because why does anyone purchase a stock? People tend to purchase a stock because they want the stock price to rise. No one shall purchase a stock if the stock price is bound to fall. In case of derivative instruments, you can do short selling and all that stuff. But as a normal retail investor who has no knowledge about derivatives, FNO in the market, right? So a normal person will always purchase the shares in the market if the expectation is price rise. So if I purchase something at 100 rupees and my expectation is the price will rise from 100 rupees to 150 rupees, correct? And it doesn't rise to 150 rupees. It went down to 80 rupees. So that's a loss for me. It's an unrealized loss for me. Because to this point of time, I'm still holding that share, which is worth 80 now, but I've still not sold off that share in the market. So that's an unrealized loss for me. It's an MTM loss for me. But that's against my expectation. इससे कंपनी को भी लॉस हो सकता है, इससे मुझको भी लॉस हो सकता है. HDFC बैंक को तो लॉस होगा ही because that's the money of HDFC bank. Correct? So what basically happens, it tends to maintain an investment fluctuation reserve. So for example, if the value of my investment falls from 100 to 80 rupees, 20 rupees the company shall have in the buffer. So on the basis of that expectation and the probability of fall, the company shall always maintain that buffer with itself. So 80 rupees ka buffer, hypothetically, it might depend from situation to situation, and you have different risk models. The people who are the FRMs in companies, they tend to frame all these models and they can judge the probability that by how much the share price can fall. So if now a part of reserve, they tend to maintain in the investment fluctuation reserve. So investment fluctuation reserve is something that goes off your bet or against your bet. Okay. So this we concluded, and this we talked about all these reserves. Any questions till now? I will just land into the cash flow statement then. Because banking of financial statements is completely off as compared to the other financial statements. Any questions anybody has? And here reserves ko samajhna, they can be asked to you in the interview also. That all these, that what kind of transfers are generally made as appropriations in case of a banking financial statement. In that case, you should know transfer to statutory reserve, transfer to capital reserve, general reserve, right? All these kinds of reserve, investment fluctuation reserve, special reserve. All these things you should know manually conceptually कि भाई कौन से reserve में क्या होता है. Right? It's a very brief one-liner answers you can just give to the interviewer who is taking your interview. So that's very basic. Any questions till now? RBI rules on reserves. Yeah, there's specific RBI rules, like specific, I would say, like nuances, like which are case to case. And there might be, not might be, there are some intricacies, like deep dive intricacies. Like, for example, if we talk about capital reserve, then RBI might state that 15.75 has to be kept in capital reserve. Then it might specify the intensity of the situations. बहुत ही high intensity वाली situation है, it might say out of that 15.75, you have to give like 2% into this, like 1% into this. And yearly, they might change that regulation and the quantum that has to be transferred from your PNL, from the PNL to the balance sheet. So that is something you can go to the RBI website, right? Because on the RBI website, you tend to get to know those percentages, those allocations, and specific sections. कि deep dive अंदर क्या क्या है, right? So that you can go like out of curiosity, right? So like Neeraj, if you want to know more about the RBI regulations, but again, that is fine because as a student of finance, right, we just need to have an overview of the kind of regulations, correct? So that is something we need not know how the RBI is framing those regulations or further subsections beneath that, right? But for your knowledge, for the sake of your curiosity and to suffice your appetite, you can just go to the RBI ka portal and you can get to know like about all these reserves. Like these reserves are like specifically mentioned there. Like once you open the portal, so all these kinds of reserves and all these kinds of different banking knowledge is also there. ठीक है? तो वो एक बार तुम पढ़ सकते हो, उसको पढ़ो, उसको समझो. Still, if in that case, like you don't understand like any specific topic or terminology in their report or on their website, you can get back to me. Okay? I'll be more than happy to assist you in that. So that is one thing. Now, coming to the cash flow statement, the most important statement, which I consider personally, we talked about what is a cash flow statement. Income from the operating activities, from investing activities, from financing activities. But now let's try to understand how does it differ in terms of a banking statement. So banking की case में if we talk about the operating activities of the business, depreciation, amortization, so because mostly इसमें क्या होगा ना, it would be your amortization. So basically, see, if we talk about this concept of amortization, right? Amortization is not always upon intangible assets. We have a concept called as the amortization of bonds or amortization of the premium on bonds or discount on bonds. So basically what happens in that particular concept is if a company has issued a bond and the company has promised you hypothetically to pay you a 5% interest rate, right? So jitna jitna interest rate the company is paying, right? So what will happen actually is it whatever kind of interest payment the company is paying you, okay? Because it has to recover that principal amount also and it has to pay you over and above the principal amount. So जैसे जैसे तुम pay कर रहे हो, the value of the principal is also coming down. So what is happening? Amortization of bond is taking place. 100 रुपीज का बॉन्ड है, तुमने पे कर करके तुमने 50 रुपए 60 रुपए पे कर दिया, तो 50-60 रुपए has been amortized, right? The value of the bond to be paid to you is coming down. Ideally, right? You need not know like how to calculate that stuff, right? It's not a matter of your concern. You are a student of finance and not a student of accounting or a CA guy, ठीक है? But ideally, एक basic you should know exactly इसमें होता क्या है. It's nothing but the valuation of the bond is coming down. The value of the bond is coming down systematically as the company is paying you back the interest payments. ठीक है? तो basically in case of banks, you might find all those investing activities, financing activities, operating activities more in case of investments. Because बैंक का तो काम ही यही है कि पैसा लेना and then पैसा देना and बीच में the bank makes a spread, right? So that is something on which the bank works upon. So all these kinds of provisions like which the bank is keeping for non-performing assets, I might have given a loan of 100 rupees, right? And I believe that 50 might turn into a bad debt. I'm believing it has not actually turned to a bad debt, but there's a risk it might turn into a bad debt. Then 50 I might keep as a provision. right? You might have the dividend from subsidiaries. HDFC might be having different subsidiaries, right? HDFC, Ergo, XYZ, right? So those subsidiaries or those companies might also be paying dividends to HDFC Bank. You might have employee stock option plans. Then you have some adjustments have been made for investments, for advances, because this portion is something, just give me a second, because this portion is something that you will not find in other financial statements, cash flow statement, or they might be there, but very less quantum, because they're not working upon deposits and investments. Like deposits तो बिल्कुल काम कर ही नहीं रहे, like investments में शायद कर रहे हो, right? But the thing is, the quantum of that things shall be very less. And the question that comes into place, I don't know, like why no one is asking me that questions. Most of the people have asked me, like in multiple colleges and other batches, they tend to ask me, sir, investment का जो component होता है, that should ideally come in cash flow from investing activities. But why are these investments or these deposits or these advances that they're coming in the operating activities? Advances किसी को दिए हैं, so that should ideally come in the financing activities, right? And कुछ भी अगर हमने investments ली हैं, or we have like increased the deposits, so that should cover, I would say not deposits, because deposits again is a kind of a financing activities, and no other company apart from banking shall be taking deposits. So deposits is exceptional. Can anyone answer this question to me? Like people from multiple colleges and students have asked me, sir, why investments are not a part of investment activities, and why advances are not a part of financing activities in case of banks? Because usually हम जो भी company देखें, IT, FMCG, pharma, capital goods, investment is a part of investment activities, right? And advances are a part of financing activities. But why not in case of banks? Any idea?
So if I may answer.
हाँ बोलो.
So because I assume that since the bank is primarily operating in these stuffs, it's taking deposits from people and then further advancing these as loans. So these become a part of their primary operating activities, hence under the cash flow of operating activities.
Good. Absolutely correct. Even Shreyas is also right. And safe too. Right? So the thing is, as my friend suggested, the thing is, see, we talk about the operating activities of a business, which are the core operations of the business. वो कंपनी बनी ही है वो काम करने के लिए. And अगर उसके अलावा, if the company is doing any other things, any other factors, so that's the non-operating activities. Now, banks are meant for such activities: taking loans, giving loans, taking investments, doing investments, taking advances and giving advances. So it's an operating activity for a bank. It's a raw material for the bank, right? So that is why any change in investments, increase in investments as a negative cash outflow, right? A decrease in investment, a positive cash, right? So all these purposes of investments, advances, deposits, all these things are something which are a part of operating activities. And deposit is a liability for the bank because the bank has to pay interest on deposits. Correct? Always remember, deposit is never an asset for bank. Deposit is always a liability for the bank because the bank has to pay interest to you. Okay? So if you just see the cash flow from the investment activities, here you have the normal things: purchase of fixed assets, sale of fixed assets, proceeds from sale of investments, and dividend from subsidiaries. Now you might argue why this investment is not a part above. Can someone tell me that what is the difference between these investments in operating activities and the investments in your investment activities, proceeds from sale of investment and subsidiary?
So the first one is for the short current asset, and for the below it is for the longer term.
Yeah, so one can be such a reason. Good one. Any more reasons? So one can be short term again, because like we are focusing here towards current assets and current liabilities. And like any more reasons? So see what's happening. Here it is just an increase or decrease in the value of investments. I purchase something for 100 rupees, it's going to 120 or 80 rupees. I'm not yet selling it off. In case of investment, it is proceeds from the sale of investments. I've sold off my investments and getting some proceeds, and those are into your subsidiaries. It's not your main company. It would be the subsidiary of HDFC Bank. कहीं और investment करी है या कहीं और से investment मिली है into our company. So that shall be categorized as your investment activities. Sale and purchase is important. यहाँ पे gain है, increase or decrease, not yet sold off. But यहाँ पे you have proceeds from sale of investments. Now you have the cash flow from financing activities. Okay. Again, your convertibles, bonds converted to equity. You have all those share warrants. So share warrant is something that gives a person the right to convert the fixed income instrument into equity. You know, fixed income instrument को you can convert that to equity if you believe the market can rise in future. अगर market बहुत अच्छी perform करे, then why to keep that fixed income security and get the limited interest payment, right? Which shall not even beat inflation. So why not convert that fixed income security to equity and sell it off in the market to get more return, right? Proceeds from issuer of tier 1, tier 2 capital structures. Now, this has been talked about in the modules. What is a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 capital structures? 3 tiers have been talked about in modules. So, usko padhna अच्छे से. Increase in borrowings. These might be some external borrowings. Some dividend the company has paid, right? Now, there can be some foreign exchange translation reserves. Can anyone suggest me what is the foreign currency translation reserve? Anyone knows?
So it is created when the transaction is between the two currency, domestic currency and the other is foreign currency.
Okay, and why do we enter into such transactions? And like, why do we create like such reserves?
To take a balance of all the TB, like trial balance. Like for the P&L item, we convert in the average rate, and for the balance sheet, we convert normally like closing, and for the shares, we normally convert in the historical price. So we will have the difference in the average and the closing and the historical. So to that have a tally, so we create a reserve.
Okay. So for all of those who do not know these different methods of historical and average method of foreign currency translations, not, I would say, very important to know, right? It's a part of the financial statement analysis. There's separate curriculums being taught in your BBA, BCom, and MBA. But the thing is, see, what basically happens is, if I'm selling something to outside, right? If as an Indian exporter, I'm selling my services to a US person, right? So the US person will pay me in dollars, right? So in that case, if I'm exporting something to outside and I want the payment in US dollars, I want my home currency to depreciate. I want the INR to depreciate and USD to appreciate, like so that I get more in dollars, right? But if the vice versa happens, if the INR appreciates and the dollar depreciates, so that might happen in the rarest circumstances, right? Or the quantum of depreciation might be less. So अगर उल्टा हो जाता है, in that case, I might get how much? In that case, I might get a lower amount of dollars for me, right? So all these kinds of risk, both from an exporter side and importer side. अब importer के case में क्या होगा कि मुझको बाहर पैसे देने हैं. If I want to pay outside in the US dollars, then I want the USD to depreciate and INR to appreciate, because agar INR will get appreciated and USD will get depreciated, then I need to pay less. But if hypothetically the situation reverses, the USD appreciates and INR depreciates, in that case, I need to pay more, right? So that's a risk for me. So all these risks are taken into account as a balance in this foreign exchange translation reserve. It is not factored in while the transaction is happening. It should be, like in most of the cases, they tend to enter into the future contracts. They lock in the price in terms of currencies, right? कि हम इतने currency rate पर ही, like we shall be buying and selling such stuff, right? But still, these kinds of situations, if a business is selling off 100 goods, right? For 100 goods, like these kinds of arrangements might not be possible, because some can be an unorganized segment भी हो सकता है, like we're buying and selling from an unorganized segment. And because mostly these kinds of services are being offered by large institutions, large services, large suppliers, large buyers, right? All these kinds of contracts of forwards and futures where they can tend to lock in that exchange rate and do the buying and selling at a future date, but not always. So uski wajah se all these kinds of dynamics or shifts tend to take place. Okay. So that is one thing. I've shared this financial statement with you already on the group. I'll be happy to share that once again if you don't have it. But ये statements starting से जितना भी theory है A to Z, because basic crux like how to read the annual report, right? Banks में क्या होता है? Like everything is almost the similar. Like you might not find something new, but in terms of balance sheet, P&L and cash flow statement is something that you might find new. All these kinds of reserves, deposits, advances. तो statements ही बस समझनी होती हैं. बाकी all these kinds of now see like you have these schedules. Statutory reserve, general reserve, special reserve, amalgamation reserve when two companies are coming together. Right, all these capital reserve, cash flow hedge reserve, foreign currency translation reserve, cash flow hedge reserve, right? Like more used in like hedge accounting to hedge the risk of your portfolio, right? So यहाँ पे like कितना opening balance था, कितना like new balance आया साल का, कितना like final balance हमारा हुआ. You need not create these things, but at least like basic like you should know कि क्या हो रहा है, right? All these kinds of share premiums are going to the general reserve. All these kinds of amalgamation reserve, one like two reserves might have been created for amalgamation. Some companies might have just one reserve. So like amalgamation is something where two companies are coming together to run their operations. Right? Investment fluctuation, cash flow reserve, foreign currency translation reserves. That's all the reserves. Kitna starting balance tha? Because in India, we generally follow the financial year from 1st April to 31st of March. Correct. So as of 1st April, kitna reserve tha? वो होगा like closing balance of previous year. पूरे साल में कितनी चीजें हुई, कितना रिजर्व बढ़ा, कितना घटा, all increases and decreases, and finally you tend to add that increase or decrease to the opening balance and get the final amount, right? Again, you need not do this manually because all these things are done by the company secretariat, CS, and all those stuff. But exactly पता होना चाहिए क्या हो रहा है like overall. So all these kinds of schedules are something which you might not find in the other report, or you will not find in the non-banking financial companies reports. Schedules. So if someone asks you that what type of schedules are prepared, right? You have the reserve and surplus schedule, deposit schedule, right? You have the borrowing schedule, you have the capital schedule, cash and balance, other liabilities schedule, balances with banks and money at call. So ये सब चीजें देखो यहाँ पे, like you have all those deposits which the banks have taken from other banks, right? और apart from others, apart from banks, saving bank deposits कितने हैं जो बैंक से लिए हैं, जो नॉन बैंक लेंडर्स हैं. Deposits of branches in India, there might be some banks in India like ICICI Bank depositing at HDFC Bank, or there can be deposits of branches outside India. For example, JP Morgan or Morgan Stanley, right, depositing their money into HDFC Bank. Then all those borrowings are here. You have those other liabilities, bills payable, contingent liabilities, cash and cash balances. The Reserve Bank of India के पास कितना पैसा वो रख रहा है in current account, in other account. Balances with other banks, HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank के पास कितना रख रहा होगा, right? With banks, other banks, short. These are money at call and short notice. So these are call money, like very short term money. For example, if my bank, if like HDFC Bank dries up with liquidity, अगर HDFC के बैंक आज पैसा खत्म हो जाता है, and उसको immediate पैसा चाहिए होता है, so it can take that money from ICICI Bank or Kotak Bank or like some other bank on like immediate basis, on in an overnight basis. So like that the bank can do. That's your call money or short notice money, right? All these investments they have mentioned कहाँ पैसा डाला है. Okay, like similar to notes to account. Advances कहाँ दिए हैं, like government guarantees हैं, कुछ unsecured हैं. Unsecured is always a problem. Priority sector, these might be some agricultural sectors, right? Some below poverty line sectors, some kind of those sectors. Fixed assets are mentioned हुए हैं. Premises, your gross block is something from which the depreciation has not been subtracted. जब depreciation subtract हो जाता है, it's a net block, right? Depreciation कितना charge हुआ है, हालांकि amalgamations में दो company के assets आए, तो कितने worth assets आए, right? All these things, other fixed assets, other assets, operating expenses, interest expended is something interest paid out, interest on deposits, RBI को भी दे पे सम इंटरेस्ट, अदर इनकम में क्या क्या आता है, all these components are a part. Like very interesting to look at your convenience. What are the operating expenses if you want to know? Payments and provisions to employees, rent and taxes, printing stationery, advertisements के खर्चे, बैंक अपनी marketing करेगा, publicity करेगा, directors fees, depreciation on bank property, auditors fee, insurance, all these things which are your other operating expenses. So for your reference, take out some time in a day, try to read the annual report, will get to know a lot. हाँ, मैं तो सबको ही बोलता हूँ कि एटलीस्ट 4-5 एनुअल रिपोर्ट्स तो कंपनी की पढ़ी लो, राइट, ऑफ लाइक एनी सेक्टर, जिसमें से एक एनुअल रिपोर्ट बैंक की तो पक्का पढ़ो ही. लाइक इफ यू आर रीडिंग 5 एनुअल रिपोर्ट्स, read 4 annual reports at least from different sectors and one at least from a banking space. अगर बहुत ज़्यादा टाइम बच रहा है, take one from bank, take one from NBFC and take one from insurance also, right? So read 7 reports. 5 तो पढ़ ही रहे हो, like including banks, take one from NBFC and take one from insurance. So try to understand क्या changes हो रहे हैं, right? And that will really help you out. इंश्योरेंस की भी हम देखेंगे, राइट, कि क्या डिफरेंस आते हैं इन टर्म्स ऑफ इंश्योरेंस. इंश्योरेंस में क्या होगा, लाइक इट्स अ प्ले ऑफ प्रीमियम्स, प्रीमियम टेकन, प्रीमियम गिवन, because we are paying premium to the insurance companies. Insurance companies are also giving premium to some main insurer to reinsure its own business, right? तो वहाँ का भी the business model is different. All this is all theory, ठीक है. So this I will always suggest ये थोड़ा होमवर्क लेके ये सब पढ़ो चीजें, कैसे बनाना है कैसे नहीं बनाना उसकी टेंशन मत लो, बट एटलीस्ट जो टर्म्स यहाँ मेंशन्ड है, मोस्ट ऑफ द टर्म्स शैल बी सेम एज सम अदर फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स. बाकी इट्स लाइक बेसिक इंग्लिश कि लोन टू MSMEs, लाइक लोन टू द एग्रीकल्चरल सेक्टर्स. नाउ लाइक फ्यूचर्स एंड ऑप्शंस की यहाँ पे बात आ गई, लाइक फॉरवर्ड रेट एग्रीमेंट्स वो करते हैं जो मैं आई वाज लाइक टेलिंग टू सेफ, right? Interest rate swaps, interest rate futures. These are core, I would say, advanced financial instruments. इनकी वर्किंग पे हम लाइक नहीं जाएंगे. फॉर ऑल ऑफ दोज हु आर पार्ट ऑफ द डेरिवेटिव करिकुलम बाय मिस्टर सिद्धांत, राइट? सो दोज गाइज आर लर्निंग दिस स्टफ ऑलरेडी, करेक्ट? लाइक इंटरेस्ट रेट स्वॉप्स, इंटरेस्ट रेट फ्यूचर्स कैसे वर्क करते हैं, करेंसी ऑप्शंस कैसे काम करते हैं प्रैक्टिकली, right? But these are all those things like which are combination of swaps, like which are combinations of futures plus swaps or options plus swaps, and which tend to hedge your portfolio against like different types of risks, right? So again, that is one thing. See, I've told you main points क्या होते हैं ना, like annual report में you just try to read the management discussion analysis report, MD analysis, executive summary, right? Just read the 3 financial statements. I would say not 3, 5 is profit and loss, balance sheet, cash flow statement, statement of equities, notes to accounts, right? Banking statements में notes to accounts को you call as schedules, right? But यहाँ bank ये सब पढ़ो and just like try to read about some CSR activities. Bus, that's it. That's a major portion. But as a beginner, read everything. ठीक है? ये सब चीजें is mostly used in banking space only. Non-banking space, but they just use a forward agreement or a future agreement that's it to lock in that interest payment. Not the interest payment, but the price of buying and selling. But the banks they use interest rate swaps, interest rate futures, cross currency swaps, currency options, currency futures. It's more of use in the banking space, right? And Indian banks में तो फिर भी कम use होता है, but foreign banks में they use all these things to hedge their portfolios. I would say not even to hedge the buying and selling wala purpose, to hedge the client's portfolio. They tend to use interest rate futures, cross currency swaps, all those things, so that the profit can be maintained for a client or the risk can be mitigated. So these are proper derivative trading strategies. Apart from those option trading strategies, these are proper derivative trading strategies which help you to maximize your return or to secure your return, to save your return at I would say at no additional risk. तब जनरल चीजें हैं कि पेनल्टीज RBI क्या लेवी करता है. तो ये फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट ऑफ शेयर ऑन द ग्रुप ऑलरेडी. Does anyone has any questions to this point? Hmm? Any questions, anybody?
No, sir.
I'm assuming that no questions. Just give me a second. ये देखो. I'll just share my screen with you. I'll just share this annual report too. See this. Hopefully my screen is visible to all. Is the annual report of life insurance company, LIC. I'll just share that with you also. बहुत सिंपल से बनाते हैं, like मतलब like if I talk about life insurance companies, they don't create some hassles, or they don't have like much of information in creating those reports. But now they're mentioned like both in Hindi and English because it's a public enterprise, right? So the thing is, if you just try to understand किसी भी life insurance company का balance sheet और P&L, okay, they shall be prepared in almost similar way, like for all of the companies, because they work on premium. उनका game ही premium है. They want to receive premiums and pay premiums. So that's their business model, right? So what basically happens if you see shareholders funds सब कुछ same रहेगा, but it's more of your policy holders funds आ जाता है यहाँ पे, right? कि पॉलिसी होल्डर्स का फंड्स कितना पैसा उन्होंने डाला है, कितनी तुम्हारे मतलब की लाइबिलिटीज हैं, राइट, एज अ पॉलिसी लाइबिलिटीज. देन यू हैव सम इंश्योरेंस रिजर्व्स हियर, provision for linked liabilities, right? Ideally what happens, the valuations, I've talked about the valuation metrics also, like in one of my modules, right, in case of insurance valuations on the website, right? The thing is, insurance valuation is something which is a bit tricky and complex also, right? So what basically happens, insurance mein na, it's very, very difficult to use a DCF method of valuation, right? Because what to forecast in terms of cash flow, the future premiums, right? Or like free cash flow to equity, because even if you're able to forecast that, right, you tend to forecast that on the basis of free cash flow to equities. But still, industry is using those relative valuation metrics, right? Your VNB margin, right? Your annualized, your APE margin, correct? And all those kinds of embedded value, like EV to embedded value is like very most common ratio being used in case of insurance. EV by your embedded value, right? And what is embedded value? What is equity value? What is your VNB margin? What is APE, right? Your annualized premium equivalent. All these terms are important metrics being used to create a valuation model for the insurance companies. And that I've discussed in the modules also. And so एक बार वो modules देखो, because most of in this case, these insurance companies are valued basis upon the RV method, the relative valuation method. Because it's very difficult to value these companies because free cash flow to equity in companies का निकालना, it might not always be correct. Because we have various things as policy holders, funds, policy liabilities, like which is not common for a layman or maybe an equity research analyst to understand these stuffs, right? वो समझेगा क्या है, but how to forecast these values in terms of FCFE. FCFE में क्या डालोगे? And so that is the major problem. So most of these valuations for insurance companies, for banks, it is done on a DCF method. But for insurance companies, in 99% of the cases, they tend to use a relative valuation method. And uske liye all these metrics have been suggested in the modules. Usko padho, samjho, you will have a much better understanding. Well, it's more of keeping your policy holders funds. Your policy holder ko kitna paisa dena, it's a policy holder liabilities, right? You have the provision for linked liabilities and provision for future appropriations and provision for insurance. So all these is something, for example, अगर मैंने insurance लिया है, right? Like किसी भी चीज का for 100 rupees, right? And something, भगवान ना करे, something unfortunate happens to like any of the person and he want that 100 rupees. And insurance company के पास वो 100 rupees हो ही ना, because like what basically happens, and we tend to pay our premiums to insurance companies tend to reinvest those premiums into market. It can be liquid funds, short term instruments में वो पैसा डाल देते हैं, like so that even if like there is some urgent demand, those funds can be sold off and the money can like get to your bank account, right? But अगर कंपनी के पास पैसा बचा ही नहीं है तो 100 रुपए देने के लिए, so certain provisions for those contingencies companies tend to keep. Now, these can be for different types of insurance scheme because you have different types of insurance, life insurance, unit linked, whole life, money back, types के बारे में भी मैंने बात करा है मॉड्यूल्स में, and कैसे वर्क करते हैं, right? To make you understand the insurance sector. ठीक है? But the thing is, they have to keep some amount as a reserve. So that can be a provision for linked liabilities. These can be some linked insurance schemes. And what are your linked insurance schemes? Where some premium goes towards investments and some premium goes towards your life cover. Correct? Funds for future appropriations. There can be some future liabilities for the business. All those kinds of investments have been talked in about here. Just a second. ठीक है, फिर अब P&L में it's most of the premium earned and premium given, right? कितना प्रीमियम मिला है, कितना प्रीमियम दिया है, right? Because it's very tricky to value these insurance companies. Okay, and rarely people value it because you have very small teams who tend to value insurance companies. Insurance को last में value करा जाता है. First they value banks because banks are more important, though insurance is also important because the penetration ratio in India is like very less, like less than 7-8%. Insurance के बारे में लोगों को जानना है, that's important. But how to value these firms is very tricky. It's more of done on the valuation for relative valuation. DCF इसमें बहुत मुश्किल से यूज होता है. And अगर यूज होता भी है तो फाइनल वैल्यू ठीक नहीं आती in most of the cases. So reinsurance ceded, that is provided, and reinsurance accepted मतलब मिला है. Because अगर if I am insuring something, if I am paying some premiums to LIC, then LIC will also be reinsuring its whole body of LIC with some other company. It can be GIC or someone else. Right? So insurance companies का भी insurance होता है, उसको हम reinsurance बोलते हैं. Then interest, dividend, all of these things are common. Insurance expenses, all of these stuffs. And then you have those cash flow statement. It's more of premiums given, premiums taken. हिंदी में लिखा है साथ में, right? It's a bit difficult to understand, but ऐसा लग रहा है कि like हिंदी ज़्यादा है, English कम है, but so the words are much more highlighted. Now like appropriations, यहाँ पे like same रहते हैं like in most of the cases, your capital reserve, investment reserve, all these things. So I'll just share this report with you also for this insurance वाला. बस एक बार लाइक बैलेंस शीट P&L बस देख लेना, ज्यादा मतलब लाइक MDA रिपोर्ट ये सब पढ़ने की नीड नहीं है. And because I know that 99.9999% of you people, 100% of the people in this batch, or like in my experiences, they never built up a career into insurance valuation. Because that is something which really the opening comes, like especially for insurance, right? Like even if they're hiring for BFSI space, for the banking financial service insurance component will be like very small. Last minute, they just tend to value insurance companies in like 30 minutes to 1 hour. They just take the price to earning, not the price to earning, price to embedded value or like EV to embedded value for such companies. For like similar companies in the same industry, and then they just tend to value your target company. That's it. Okay, so that is something, and more of the information that they tend to take, that how much premium is going out, how much premium the company is planning to get increased, how much revenues are increasing. So again, that comes from the management guidance, from management commentary conference calls. Because most of the things I personally believe is it is more of, I would say, a lot of information, especially in the insurance space, is hidden. Most of the information is available only to the actuarial scientist of the company, because ये सब insurance companies pensions पे बहुत काम करते हैं, pensions, your provident funds, your gratuity. So all these calculations are being done by the actuarial scientist. It's a kind of a specialized profession, a different profession versus a CFA or a CA, right? तो उसके basis पे they're doing all these calculations. उसमें वो प्रीमियम की भी कैलकुलेशन करते हैं, हर चीज की they like tend to do the calculation. So all these back-end calculations, all these terms are a bit hidden for a general public to understand, and even for the analyst also, right? Because all these back-end calculations, sophisticated risk models are being used, right? So a normal equity research analyst or a valuation expert भी इन companies को value नहीं कर पाता. That is why 99.9% of the cases, insurance companies are priced and not valued, because valuation, according to me, can always be done upon a DCF model. अगर उसके अलावा कोई और भी मेथड यूज कर रहे हो, it's all about pricing. Any questions, anybody? तो इंश्योरेंस में कंफ्यूज नहीं होना, बस स्टेटमेंट ऊपर से नॉर्मली रीड कर लो फॉर योर रेफरेंस कि क्या कंपोनेंट्स है लाइक विच आर डिफरेंट फ्रॉम द अदर्स. एंड जो कंपोनेंट्स डिफरेंट होंगे, दैट वुड जस्ट बी योर प्रीमियम्स, your premium reserve account, your life insurance premium reserve account, or reinsurance premium. That's it. Any questions, anybody?
No, sir.
Anyone else? एक चीज तुम कर सकते हो एज ए होमवर्क ऑल्सो, जस्ट टेक आउट वन एनुअल रिपोर्ट ऑफ एनबीएफसी, किसी भी एनबीएफसी का. जस्ट टेक आउट द एनुअल रिपोर्ट, राइट, एंड try to get to know if something is different. Try just take. I'm audible to all, right?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So just try reading an annual report of an NBFC and let me know if you find something different. Hopefully should not. Make me some searching something for you. Because उसमें भी you might have schedules. You will have schedules. देखो मैंने यहाँ पे क्या करा है. I've just opened the annual report of Muthoot Finance, right, into gold loans and different stuff. तो मुझे आज सच कोई डिफरेंस नहीं दिख रहा. It's the same. There might be some XYZ components, like for example, net gain or fair value hedges. Okay. That's again, जो भी अपने वो component of interest या component of deposits को hedge कर रहे हैं, right? Like which is not deposits per se, but more of that should be in terms of advances, जहाँ से उनको पैसे की कमाई हो रही है, right? उसको वो कैसे hedge कर रहे हैं, उस पर gain and loss क्या हो रहा है, right? So that's the operating activity for the non-banking financial companies. So NBFC के भी financial statements में difference नहीं होगा, same ही होंगे. Because not all the I would say कि NBFCs take deposits, correct? Because NBFCs का business model basically they also take loans and give out loans, right? So like one NBFC is taking loan from the other NBFC or the other bank, right, to sustain its operations. And तभी उनका लाइक क्रेडिट टू डिपॉजिट रेशियो भी कम रहता है, क्योंकि बैंक्स का बहुत रहता है, बिकॉज बैंक्स पे डिपेंड होते हैं, लोन लेते रहते हैं, मार्केट से उठाते रहते हैं. बट एनबीएफसी इज द मोर रेगुलेटेड. आई वोंट से कि मोर रेगुलेटेड, बट लाइक दे डोंट हैव लाइक सच मोर अपॉर्चुनिटीज टू टेक अ हायर क्वांटम ऑफ लोन्स एज कम्पेयर टू बैंक्स. तो वो लाइक एनबीएफसी टू एनबीएफसी आते वो लोन लेते हैं, या दे टेक लोन फ्रॉम बैंक्स एंड देन गिव आउट टू सम अदर एनबीएफसीज. Banks won't be taking banks will not be taking loans from NBFCs, but NBFCs shall be taking loans from banks. NBFCs can be dependent upon banks, but banks won't be dependent upon the NBFCs. Right? So that is one thing. इसमें भी ज्यादा कुछ फर्क आएगा नहीं, like in those reports for NBFCs as well. We'll see. Even if you go for a brokerage firm like Angel One, right? Their more of income should be of interest income or commissions, fees commissions. That's it. और वहाँ पे कोई difference नहीं होने वाला. Because again, all these kinds of brokers, they don't like don't give out loans or don't take deposits. Their income is more of like charging commissions and brokerage fee, right? Like so, like out of buying and selling. So उनका भी like business model is based upon what? Taking commissions, not giving out much of commissions, but taking commissions in terms of like per trade and all of those stuffs, like collecting fees. Expenses can be like if they are paying some commissions, like to some other parties, there can be some depreciation, amortization expense upon their tech instruments, right? But ज़्यादातर it would be all your fees and commissions only. If I just show you, ये Angel One का मेरे पास open है. See, it's more of interest income, fees and commission income. Well, उनका business model ही यही है. On a trade, they have to earn money. On a lot, they have to take the money from investor. राइट तो उनका वो ट्रेडिंग बेसिस पे लाइक इन्वेस्टमेंट बेसिस पे ब्रोकर्स का बिजनेस मॉडल ही वो रहता है. एंड अगेन ऑल दीज बिजनेस मॉडल्स फॉर ब्रोकर्स आल्सो लाइक एंजल ब्रोकिंग या कोई भी होगा, दीज आर मोर ऑफ प्राइस्ड इन टर्म्स ऑफ रिलेटिव वैल्यूएशन, राइट? बिकॉज वैल्यूएशन इन कंपनीज की इज वेरी ट्रिकी. एंड इसमें भी तुम कैसे फोरकास्ट करोगे, लाइक कितने कमीशन के बेसिस पे स्टिल यू कैन, बट लाइक मेजरली इज बीइंग डन इन टर्म्स ऑफ योर आरवी मेथड. एनी क्वेश्चंस एनीबॉडी? You guys can even ask me questions for live projects. Any
Sir,
question? Today's session है वैसे. हाँ पूजा.
so I have the question of how to prepare assumption for financial modeling.
How to prepare assumptions for financial modeling.
Yeah, because it is a main thing in the financial modeling.
Have you watched the financial modeling ka modules on website?
No, from the CFA I have watched.
No. Like watch the modules on the website.
Okay, okay,
You'll get to know how to create assumptions. Okay?
okay, yes.
All the different kinds of assumptions that you might find in this entire world is there. Okay? वो सब
Okay.
कुछ mention है. तो वो देखना एक बारी. कोई doubt होता है पूछना. Okay? Any more questions, anybody specifically to anything? I'm waiting for any questions. I plan to have one more session tomorrow also with you guys. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, so you guys can still keep on pinging me for any doubts or questions on the chat box, on the chat box or on the WhatsApp chat, I would say. Okay. It's not just like limited to these sessions. I just want to have to attend these sessions and you'll be just asking the questions in the chat box for Zoom. No. वैसे भी पूछते रहो, like whenever I get time or like anyone from my team gets time, they tend to respond you, like either through voice notes or text notes. ठीक है, so जब तक like your guys are getting voice notes, assume it is me. If you guys are not getting voice notes for a subsequent period of time, assume it's someone from my team who's texting you. Like who might be an expert into this field. ठीक है. So again, that is a thing. तो ठीक है, कोई भी क्वेश्चंस होते हैं कम बैक टू मी, लाइक प्रोजेक्ट स्टार्ट करो, एटलीस्ट स्टार्ट करो, बिकॉज जब तक स्टार्ट नहीं करोगे क्वेश्चंस नहीं आएंगे, बिकॉज स्टार्ट करने से पहले यू माइट हैव सम आई वुड से लाइक ऑड क्वेश्चंस आल्सो, क्या करें कैसे करें, बट एटलीस्ट लाइक वंस यू टेक दैट फर्स्ट स्टेप देन गुड क्वालिटी क्वेश्चंस विल पॉप अप इन योर माइंड दैट वी आर स्टक इन हियर, हम आगे कैसे बढ़े, राइट? सो वो चीज़ करो एंड देन यू गाइस कैन गेट बैक टू मी, विल मीट सून, ठीक है? चलो, ओके गाइस, थैंक यू सो मच, बाय।
Thank you, sir.